webinar called Why Leadership Training is Critical, Tips to Make It Easy, Practical, even Virtual. So today I'd like to ask that we make this session very interactive, and there are lots of ways that we could do that. We can do it with polling questions. You'll see a lot of the polling questions come over. We can also do it with hand raising, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask plenty of questions. I did want to let you know that Kathy Doris from our office is standing by, and she can answer some of your questions as you go through today. But I'd like to make sure that everybody has found the area where you can raise your hand. So let's do a quick test, and if you'll look by your name where you signed in, you'll see several icons, and one is the picture of a hand. So if everybody would raise your hand, please go ahead and leave it up for a second. And I see many of you are coming through now. It looks like 54% of you, 58% of you have raised your hands. Perfect. I'm going to lower all the hands now for us automatically, but just know that's one way that we'll be communicating, as well as with the polling questions, and please don't hesitate to ask any questions as we go along. So this session is for you if you are really a learning and development professional who's challenged with finding ways to have a proven, measurable leadership development program that's going to get the results that you're looking for. So you want to know that the leadership program works, and you want to know that it'll have the impact you need. It's also for you if you need to meet the learning needs of your organization in the fastest way possible, because you know that your managers are busy, they're eager to develop their skills, but they're challenged by how much time it can take away from the office. The last thing is you may also find that you're looking for programs that integrate with your organization's culture. So you know that your managers learn best when the learning is personalized and targeted to your organization and to their specific needs. So there may be many challenges that managers in your organization are facing now. You might find that they lose effectiveness over time, or even your best, most experienced ones can lose their edge. Or you may find that they either never received adequate skill building opportunities, or their current skills have become stale and they need development opportunities to stay sharp. Or you find that new managers start picking up the bad habits around them, and they start mimicking the existing managers, and you hate to see what's happening in that case in some instances. Or last but not least, your managers are feeling swamped, trying to do it all and get it all done, and they're concerned with the amount of time that it takes to take away from their office to do training. And they're just trying to keep their head above water, and they don't have time or the ability to focus on leadership development. So what happens as a result is that you find then, let's say your organization does an employee opinion survey, and that's released, and we hear from so many of our clients who say that in that survey, there was a real need indicated for leadership development. And the employees were saying that they were feeling growing frustration with their managers. And if you are an HR manager or a talent manager, you are then approached and you're asked to fix it, and you have to make it better. And you know that the managers in your organization need further development, but your question is, how do you do it? And more importantly, how do you do it well? So one of the things that you may then find is that when you're faced with trying to solve that problem, you're not sure where to start. And the infrastructure that we live in and the demands put upon us don't allow us the time or the resources to support programs at the level we know we need to. So we don't have time or resources to build in strong reinforcement strategies or targeted customization, and we don't have the resources to measure the effectiveness of our programs, so we can't show proof that they're making a difference. So I'm just curious at this point, how many of you can identify with any of these HR challenges? And I'd like to ask you to raise your hand if you can identify with any of those challenges, and just go ahead and raise the hand icon now so that I can see how many of you can relate to that. And I'm seeing 37% of you, 40% of you are saying yes, 42% of you really can relate to a lot of those challenges. So I'm going to lower the hands now. Okay, so here's one question that I'd love to hear from you, and you can type this in the question box, and I'm going to read some of those for what you find. But here's the question for you. What challenges are most significant for you as a learning and development professional or as an independent leader? What are the most challenges you have when it comes to developing managers. And so please type in your challenge in the question and answer box that you can see on the side, and I will, again, go ahead and read some of those. And what you'll recognize is that probably you're not alone with this. And let's take a look at what some of you are saying some of your challenges are. So go ahead and just type your challenge. What's some of the biggest challenge that you're facing? So what someone is saying here, time and resources. So definitely we can see that, Beverly. Or time and cost, Irene. Dan, getting managers to understand the difference between leadership and management. Good point, Dan. You know, we lead people and we manage processes, and they need to be good at both, but they need to do them in different ways at different times. Felicia, getting enough time to train. Or Lori, knowing the content if you're a trainer, for sure, Lori. Or having them have the time to come to training. We hear a lot of people say that, Gwen. You know, realigning them through integrations and many requests for leadership development across the new organization. Good point, Kelly. You know, how do you make people understand that? So those are just a few. I know I see a lot more of you typing in your challenges, but one of the things that I hope that you'll recognize from that is that you're not alone in facing some of these challenges. And our purpose for this session is to give you some tactical, practical solutions for addressing those. And I also promise that at the end of the session today, I'll share with you some additional resources that you can download or link to. So I'm not going to leave you hanging. So let me introduce myself. My name is Susan Cullen. I'm president of Quantum Learning Solutions, and we are leadership development experts with over 20 years of experience providing leadership development to some of the best-known companies in the U.S. abroad, companies like United Airlines, Lockheed Martin, Sunoco, Xerox, Panasonic, Discover, among many others. And we've worked in almost every industry in the U.S. And our clients were facing the same types of challenges that you've mentioned. And they were looking at how do we find ways to do even more, do it even better, and do it in less time. So I've been able to distill the key, most significant things that I think are absolutely essential skills for managers to develop in today's world. And I've identified also the most critical components that you need to have in your leadership development programs. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, we'll start with one very primary belief, and that is that the best learning is a process and not an event. So our clients, like you've just mentioned in your comments, you know, our clients are very, very busy just like you. We've been getting great results from our 2 to 3 day leadership programs, but we knew that we needed to find ways to meet the needs of learners to shorten the program into smaller nuggets of learning and spread it out over time. And some people are also looking for ways to reduce travel expenses. So it became a natural next step for us to take a look at a lot of the proven methods that we've incorporated in the traditional classroom and make them a blend of on-demand and live virtual learning, as well as some have a component of traditional in-classroom training. So we'll show you how that works and provide you with a best practice example of this towards the end of the session today. So our agenda is to first of all begin and look at why leadership training is critical, and especially critical in today's world. And what are some of the unique things that managers are facing today? And then we'll look at the 3 most essential skills we found that managers really, really need to be very highly adept at. We'll look at the one most often overlooked simple tactic that if your managers just do this one simple thing will have a huge impact on their ability to keep your employees productive. And then we'll look at the most important elements of learning that help leadership programs have a profound impact, and I'll share with you an example of that. And also at the end of today's session, we'll show you how you can also receive a free ebook that provides more information about one of those most important skills that managers need. So let's begin to talk about why leadership training is so critical today. And here's a question that I'd like to bring up. I'm going to bring up a polling question, and I'd like to see your thoughts to this. So let me bring that up now. And I'm bringing a polling question on the screen, and it is, which challenges do the managers in your organization face now? So you can select any one of these. We can select more than one if you'd like, but let's take a look, and please go ahead and select one or more of the challenges that you're finding that the managers in your organization are facing. Do they find that they lose effectiveness over time? Do they need skills to be effective? And are they wanting to shorten the time as much as possible in the classroom? So let's see what you're saying and what you're finding, and then I will show you the results. It looks like we've got almost 80% of you, a little more than that. So I'm going to show you the results now. And let's take a look at that. And let me make sure that you can see that. I just lost the screen I was looking for. Okay, so you should see then at this point that one of the things that we recognize is that we're seeing that 36%, or they're saying managers lose effectiveness over time. 75% know that you have new managers that need to be skilled, and 36% are saying that you need to really shorten the time in the classroom. So with that said, let's go back and take a look at some of the things that we know that we need to do. And let me take a look here. Okay. So with that, one of the things that we know that comes up is that it becomes very important that when you are finding that your managers are losing effectiveness over time, they need skills, and they want to shorten time, we've got to look at, why do we need to provide leadership training in the first place? And one key, very key reason is that there is now a real gap in the leadership pipeline. So what happens is we have a younger generation coming on board and entering the workforce at the same time that we have a lot of baby boomers with advanced skills and knowledge that are leaving the workplace. But now what happens is there's a big gap in the middle, and most organizations say they don't have enough managers prepared to fill the needs of those that are leaving. In fact, here's some real interesting research I'd love to share with you. According to Brandon Hall Group's 2015 Succession Management Study, the majority of organizations reported that improving the health of their talent pipeline is an essential outcome of their succession management. But get this, only 84% of organizations, 84% of organizations say they are suffering from a lack of ready leaders. 84% is extremely high. They're not ready. They don't have enough people to fill the pipeline. Now, in fact, what we see is that just over a quarter of all organizations indicate that they have a ready and willing successor for only 10% or less. That's significant. And another 7% said they have no one groomed. So it is no surprise that that most organizations plan to increase their investment in developing ready leaders over the next 12 months. So what this study also showed us is that one of the top 3 findings they had is that the talent pipeline health continues to threaten leadership continuity. And succession management commitment is on the rise with prioritization of a formal strategy for all parts of the organization, not just the top leaders, but all parts of the organization. And what they also see is that technology is underutilized, hindering efficiency of succession management and performance management. So here's another very interesting study, is that we begin to see that the emphasis for succession management is growing. And let's just take a look at these statistics. One of the things we see is that only 20% of people find that succession management strategy has been in place more than 5 years. 45% are finding that succession management strategy has been in place 5 years or less, and 35% don't have a succession management strategy at all. So what that means is that 80% are finding either they've had it for a short period of time or no time at all, and consequently, organizations are beginning to formalize a succession strategy across all parts of the organization and extending the process below senior leadership levels. Now, what we hear from our clients, you might be experiencing also, and they're comments like these. We used to hold talent reviews in just some of our business units, but today we talk about all of our people across the whole organization. So more and more people are saying, we've got to really pay attention to this. And it's important to never underestimate how important it is to have your frontline managers highly skilled and ready to fill the pipeline. So Gallup did one of the most extensive studies ever where they went in to find out what were the beliefs that employees in organizations had that separated the organizations that had the highest profitability and productivity from those that were just average. And what they found is that they had beliefs like, I know what is expected of me, or in the last 7 days I've received praise for good work, or my supervisor seems to care about me as a person, things like that, of those 12 beliefs. And when it was all said and done, and this is the key point, Gallup found that what becomes clear from this investigation is that while we tend to celebrate great companies, in reality, there are only great managers, and it's on the front line that the hard work of building a stronger workforce gets done. So prepare your frontline managers. That's the key point. And have them ready and keep developing them once they're in that position, because great companies are really developed during the daily one-on-one relationships and interactions that each of your managers or supervisors face. So I'm going to see if I can bring up here the next polling question. So let's take a look at this next question. I'm going to bring it over to you and ask you to describe what you begin to see, what's happening in your organization as well. So let us know about the leadership pipeline in your organization. Do you need more managers and supervisors trained for the future, or have enough managers already, or are you not really sure? So let's take a look and see what you find. And it looks like we've got getting more and more people answering now, getting close to 80%, a little more than 80%. Okay, so I'm going to close down the poll and share it with you. And one of the things that we see here is that 85% of you are saying we need more managers and supervisors trained for the future. So that's really significant. And one of the things that we begin to see from this is that we've got to be able to have our people ready and willing and able to go. So let me make sure that I'm able to get this next slide up. Stay with me for just a second. And let's take a look now at what we see as the key things that we've got to do to help our managers become effective. So what are the 3 most essential skills that your managers need in this case? So one of the things that we'll be doing is that we'll begin to start to talk about what we found the 3 most important skills they need are. And then from 20 years of experience doing this, and we've narrowed it down to what we found are the most practical and tangible ones that they really, really need. But what we also see here is that there are a trend at the things that the best managers do that separates everybody else from the rest. And here's what we see, that the best managers know themselves. They know what their strengths are, they know what their challenges are, and they work on those. What they also do is they don't use a one-size-fits-all management approach. So they adapt what they're doing to make it more effective. We also see that they are wildly effective communicators. So if they have the ability to express their ideas and bring out the best in other people's ideas, they're going to be extremely effective, and communication is critical in today's world. And last but not least, they know how to bring out the best in each employee they manage. So these are what the best managers do. The question then becomes, okay, so how do we train them? What do we need to do to help them gain those skills? And here are the 3 skills that we found are most important in today's world. So they've got to build an engaged team. So they've got to keep, especially with the different generations in the workforce today, they've got to look at what does it take to really help people bring out the best that they have inside of them and want to bring it to work every day. They've got to coach them to enhance performance on a regular basis, and they've got to coach them throughout the year on the goals that they're held accountable for. So we're going to go through each one of these today, one at a time. But for the sake of time, I'm going to put the most emphasis on the first one, and then we'll briefly touch on the other 2. So let's start with the first one, and that is how to build an engaged team. And let's first define how we recognize an engaged team in the first place. And so one of the things that we know is that engaged employees are those who are mentally and emotionally invested in their work and contributing to their employer's success. So in other words, these are the people that want to give their best every day that they come to work, and they feel motivated and inspired, and they're turned on, they're not turned off. And a lot of people can think of building an engaged workforce as a soft skill or a nice to have. However, a recent study from Gallup shows that it really has a hardline, bottom line impact. So what we see is that when organizations have an engaged culture, they have significantly less absenteeism and turnover, and all of you who are in an HR perspective or a talent management role, you understand the financial impact of that. Also, we see less safety incidents, or if you're in the healthcare area, fewer patient safety incidents. But what we also see is that there's significantly increased productivity and profitability. So engagement is one of those things that really does have a hard bottom line impact on an organization's success. Now, Aon Hewitt did another study, and they found that even an incremental impact on engagement increases profitability. So, for example, as you can see here, let's say in this example of a $5 billion organization, 1% improvement in engagement scores increased profitability by $20 million. So 5% improvement increased profitability by $102 million, and 10% improvement was $204 million. So what we begin to see is that it makes sense for your organization to build an engaged culture because it has a huge impact on the bottom line. And the ones that do that, as we just saw before with the Gallup study, the ones that do that are your frontline managers. Now, this was also interesting from the Association of Talent Development, that they found that good relationships between employees and their immediate supervisors are far and away the most important driver of employee engagement. 91% that report that that's the case. So we begin to see that this is really important and it's really significant. And trust and engagement are also highly linked. So the 8% of employees who trust their managers to a great extent are also the most engaged group, and the next 67% who trust their managers to a great or moderate extent are the second most engaged group, and so on. So trust and trust of their manager is really important. And if trust builds engagement, just what does it look like? And you know, one of the things that's been found, again, is that the three most important actions are for managers to listen to their employees and understand their concerns. So really tune into them. It's not just about the managers talking. And then it's also about, you know, walking the talk and following through on commitments. Managers are doing what they say they're going to do. And last but not least, which is one thing we build into all of our programs, is encouraging employees to offer their ideas and their suggestions to, you know, how an organization can improve or how they as individuals can improve. And all of those things are really strong drivers for trust between the manager and their employee. So let's talk now about a manager's ability to motivate and inspire their staff. And this was another very interesting study that was published in Bob Nelson's book called 1001 Ways to Reward Employees. And he went back and he asked managers what they thought employees most wanted from their jobs. And the managers thought it was one thing. And then they went back and they asked the employees, and the employees said something totally different. So what managers said they thought they wanted, that they thought employees wanted, was number one, good wages, number two, job security, number three, promotion and growth. So in other words, the managers are thinking what their employees really want are the financially related things. Then they went back and they asked the employees the same question. What they found is that number one was full appreciation for work done. Number two was feeling in on things. Number three is sympathetic understanding of problems. What it means is being heard and understood. Then came job security. Then came good wages. So in other words, it looked like this. And one of the things that they found is that these top three things became really, really important. Now, what surprised me about that is that I wasn't real sure in the beginning when I first heard this study until I started to think, well, there's reasons that people quit and leave. There's reasons that people quit and stay. And when people decide to leave, it's usually because one of these top three things weren't there. They didn't feel appreciated, They didn't feel in on things that impacted them, and they didn't feel heard and understood. So I'm curious right now, we could see a show of hands. How many of you can just relate to this from your own experience? Raise your hand if you can relate to this from your own experience. This makes sense to you. You've seen this. You can identify with, yes, I can see why these things are really important to us. So go ahead and raise your hand. And I can see so far we've got 65% of you that can relate to that. So I'm going to lower all the hands now. So it actually went up to 68%. So we can see that a lot of us can relate to that. We've seen that. So here's what we began to see then also, is that, with the reasons people leave and stay, Saratoga Institute found that 79% of employees who quit their jobs cite a lack of appreciation as a key reason for leaving. So that's why they say they're leaving. So next point is that we all have, as human beings, we have a fundamental human need to feel respected and valued, and that our hard work is noticed. And this is one of the most powerful tools for building engagement. And when it's not there, people disengage, and when it is there, because it's especially coming from their manager, they engage, and it becomes really, really critical. So I'm going to now bring up the next polling question for us, and I'd be curious to see what you find in your own organization. So I'm just sending over a poll now that asks you, could managers in your organization do a better job of showing appreciation than they do now? And so just let us see, yes or no, what you think. And I'm curious to see your thoughts. And let's take a look and see, and then I'll show you how your thoughts compare to the benchmark to other participants in the session today. So you can take a look and just give it another second. Looks like we've got pretty close to 80% of you now who are saying that. So let me show you what we begin to see as the results. And it shouldn't surprise you. 94% of you said yes, managers in our organization could do a better job of showing appreciation than they do now. So that is really significant. And just as food for thought, if you're seeing that in your organization, that's a critical thing that you want to build into your leadership development programs, because it's one of those things that will help build engagement to a great extent. Now, another thing that we put a lot of focus on is recognizing that we're not all the same, and that the best way to show appreciation is different for different people. So some people like very public recognition, and other people hate that. And we use the DISC model of understanding human behavior to help us really recognize the unique motivators and the hot buttons that can engage or disengage employees. And I'm just curious if you could raise your hand. How many of you are familiar with DISC so far? So if you've heard of the DISC model, could you raise your hand and just let me see? I'd be curious to see how many hands go up at this one. So it looks like about 38% of you are familiar with the DISC model, so that's good. For those of you who have not heard of DISC before, I'm going to give you just a real quick review of what it is. But we begin to see that there are 4 basic different behavioral styles. The DISC model stands for the first letter of each of those 4 styles, the D style, I style, S style, and C style. And each of these are going to have different motivators. They're not going to want the same things. So the D style is going to be very focused on bottom line issues. They want you to be direct, and they want to move quickly and make decisions. They really don't want a manager to micromanage them. The I style is going to want to have a personal relationship with their manager. They're going to want to have a lot of fun and be optimistic and begin to feel that there's a sense of camaraderie at work. The S style is more low-key, but also very people-oriented, more low-key than the I style or the D style. They're very even-tempered. They're very patient. They're good at calming conflict when it occurs around them. And the C style, or the conscientiousness style, is very focused on accuracy and quality and doing things right. And each of these different behavioral styles will have different motivators, and it's really important that a manager understands what those are. And they also understand what's going to demotivate them or tune them off. So even if you are already somewhat familiar with DISC, Many of you may not be familiar with this DISC management profile, which will actually really enable people to break down and understand more information about their natural tendencies as a manager, and also what do they need to do differently with each of their team members. And one of the things that we like about it so much is that there will be sections where it will tell them, based on all these different functions of a manager, how do they need to direct and delegate to their people. It will tell them on an individual basis, what do I as a manager need to do with this other person based on their style to motivate them or develop them. Or even in some cases where managers are trying to be more influential and get their ideas across to their own manager, it will give them suggestions for that. So I will just let you know that we have a free ebook for each of you at the end of today's session. When you complete the feedback form, we will send that ebook to you that will give you more information about this than I just have time to go over today. But I think you'll find it very interesting if you're more interested in going into this in more depth. So we've talked so far then about the first skill, which is the first skill that managers need to know, which is really all about how to build an engaged workforce. I'm now going to go through the next two skills quickly just for the sake of time, but we know that the second of the three leadership skills is to coach and develop people. And the difference between a leader who gains commitment from employees and one who gains compliance is coaching. And the most effective leaders see themselves as being coaches and leaders rather than managers or supervisors. So I know there was a question before about how do we help people understand the difference between managing and coaching. This is one, management leadership, this is one key way. Another thing that we see that happens is that, we've got to help them learn that it's real important to provide constructive feedback. This is one of the biggest challenges for most managers. It impacts everyone. And, providing constructive feedback on the spot at any time is what we're really talking about here. It's not just once a year. And, people don't know how to do it well, or they shy away from conflict. But yet when it's handled effectively, it can be a real gift for an employee. And the impact is that not only is it a disservice to not provide coaching to people who need it, but it impacts everyone on your team and everyone around them. And when you are able to provide that coaching in an effective way, you can overcome a lot of costly and time-consuming performance problems while also strengthening skills. And I will say that when you do this in the most effective way, you can build engagement because people feel that the manager is focused on them and really wants to help them succeed. So let's take a look at the next polling question. I'm going to bring the next one down for you. I'm curious to see what you found in your own organization. So let's take a look at this next question, which asks us, do managers in your organization address performance issues often enough? So please just select one and just let us know yes or no, and then I'll show you the results so you can benchmark yourself and your organization against the other people who are on the session today. So please just select one of those answers, yes or no, and let us know if you think managers in your organization address performance issues often enough. And it looks like we're getting most of you responding. Okay, so I'm going to show you the answers now. And what you can see is that 73% of you are saying, no, we don't do this often enough. And so you're not alone if you felt like in your organization this was something you needed to focus on. In fact, one of the things that we see is that most people don't do this well, and yet the reason they don't do it well is that they've never had training to do it well, they've never had practice to do it well, they're not really sure, and they don't want to have conflict. So when they've been given training on how to do this well, it can make a huge impact, and that's why we have that as one of the second most important skills they need today. The third most important skill is to coach them throughout the year to meet their annual goals. And we've talked about coaching for feedback, but it's also important to talk about coaching to set effective goals. And the most important function of a manager or supervisor is real simple. It's just to help their people succeed. And very rarely do people make their goals really, specific and measurable and time-related. Some people use the acronym SMART. This isn't naturally intuitive for people. So a lot of times they don't do it really well and they don't make it real specific, and they don't use the key communication skills that they need to use during the whole process. So they've not learned to make things specific or to get, ask questions of employees or get their buy-in throughout the way. So we see that that can be a challenge as well. So let's take a look now at the one most often overlooked simple tactic that managers miss. And if there's one thing they start doing, I think this is one of the most key things that can have the biggest difference for them. And think of it this way. When we talk about the difference between a coach and a judge, we know that a coach is focused on the future and a judge is focused on the past. A coach really wants you to succeed, and a judge is hopefully impartial. A coach cares about you and is on your side, and a judge really is just, really looking at how do we mete out justice in the world. And so what happens is that if your managers are going through a process where they're establishing goals with their people, but they have no coaching conversations to conduct progress reviews with them throughout the year, they just go straight to a performance appraisal without having any coaching throughout the year at all, they are merely a judge. And what happens in most organizations is the goal-setting part is mandated, the performance appraisal part is mandated, but the coaching throughout the year is not. And it doesn't happen nearly enough. And one of the reasons it doesn't happen nearly enough is because of the world we live in today. I mean, to everyone's, to everyone's credit, never at any point in history have we had so much communication technology as we have now. So that text message is coming in, the cell phone is ringing, you're getting emails, voicemail, and it's all happening at once, and it's making everything urgent. So the solution is, to ask the first question, so how do we make time for those really, really important things, like coaching our people throughout the year? And it's that we have to make them urgent and important. And we have to do it by scheduling those coaching sessions throughout the year. And the best managers do this 1 year in advance. And they will schedule those coaching conversations with their employees a year in advance, and they put it on their calendar, and they make sure that it happens. And this is the one thing that can make such a huge difference, because for the life of me, I really don't know how, as a manager, we can help our people succeed if we are not coaching them throughout the year on the goals they're held accountable for. Because how else are we going to make it really happen if we're not meeting with them throughout the year? So let's give you a chance to also benchmark yourself against others on the session. Let's look at our next polling question. And please select one of these answers. What percentage of your managers do you think conduct progress reviews frequently enough throughout the year? Almost all, most, some, a few, or almost none. And let's take a look, and then I'll share with you the results of what we see in the class and in this session today. And you'll have a chance to really begin to see, okay, so how do we compare with other people? And I'm going to wait just another second or two to let the rest of you finish. Looks like most of you have sent your thoughts over now. Okay, so let me show you what we found and give you a chance to see how you compare. So what we see is that we only had 6% who said almost all of them. Hats off to those of you who said 6%. I think it's great. You should give yourself a big pat on the back because you're in the minority. What we see is 12% said most, so that's good. 41% some. But we've got here, 29 who say few and 12% almost none. And if you encourage them and you find ways to build this into your performance management system, or you find ways to really make sure that you are making this an active part and included in your leadership training and included in your performance management system, it will go a long way. So at this point then, we've talked a lot about what we see are the most important skills that can have the biggest impact on employees in your organization, the most important skills that managers need to have to engage and to coach and to really lead them throughout the year. Let's now take a look at the elements of effective leadership programs that you really need to have to make sure you're helping your managers make those types of targeted skill development built into their own performance. So, a key thing that we've recognized is that we've been doing leadership training for some time, when you develop programs this way, you can expect results similar to the ones that we consistently get year after year, where we begin to see that, here in one of this first points, that 90% of participants believe this will increase their effectiveness on the job by 50% or more, and 84% believe it's superior to other programs or the best I've taken. We've also had independent studies from independent organizations who find that 12 to 18 months after completing the course, 80% of people are still applying the information, which is really huge. So the question is then, what are the things you need to have that you need to design as best practices? And the very first key thing is that the structure of the course so that learning is a process and not an event. That's so, so, so important. So even if you have, even in our 2 to 3 day traditional classroom courses, we can begin to see that we build so much reinforcement into it that we spread it out over it to make it a year-long process, even though it's only a 2 to 3 day event. Now, there are some benefits to doing this virtually, and which we'll talk about, or a combination of virtual with classroom, which I'll show you in a minute. But one of the best practices that we see is, first and foremost, make your learning a process. What you don't want to have is a class that people go back and put their workbook on the shelf and forget about. The next thing is to incorporate action items to complete between sessions. So this is one thing that virtual can lend itself to very well, but you want to be able to have that in any way that you do it. And in the process, also incorporate a lot of interaction. So have interaction with other learners, have it with the instructor, have it with a coach if they're working with a coach, have it built into online components. Build in a lot of interaction into your process as you go. You can do this virtually as well as you can do it in the traditional form. Also build a social community into it. So get your class back together if you're having virtual reinforcement webinars. Also build a social community into your virtual platform that you're using so that people can interact with each other, they can interact with other participants, they can interact with participants from other classes, and they can make it very engaging in the process as they go through that too. Also incorporate a wide variety of reinforcement resources. I told you that that's one of the things that we're most well known for, but I have strong, strong, strong bias towards, because this is one of the biggest things to make sure they apply it on the job. And you can do this in a lot of different ways. One way that we do it is with live virtual reinforcement sessions or progress reports, or asking them to complete surveys about what they've done, or reinforcement tips newsletters, or sharing their plans with their own manager. There's lots of ways to do that. Also track them, track their progress, and measure results and application on the job. So we always ask people at intervals throughout the class and afterwards, tell us what you've learned, tell us what you've done, and tell us what's happened as a result of what you've done. And collect all that data and share it with our HR talent manager partners and the clients that we serve so that they can also track that as well. Now, the question becomes, why add virtual components to a leadership learning process? And here's where we see there's some key ways to do that. That we know that learning is most effective when it's a process, and virtual learning makes it easy to be a process because what they can do is spread it out over time into shorter segments. And what we also know is on-the-job application increases when we have coaches as part of the program who encourage managers to implement their action plans. So when you add one-on-one coaching, you can really customize it to an individual's needs, much more so than we could do in a traditional classroom experience. Individuals sometimes have questions about their own unique challenges that they don't want to raise in the classroom, but they will with their personal coach, one of our professional coaches. So that will give them a chance to do that. And what we always hear, and if you're in learning and development, you probably hear this all the time too, that people are time challenged and they want learning in shorter time frames. So if you have a 3-day program, they want to do it in 1 day. If you have a 1-day program, they want to do it in half a day. If you have a half-day program, they want to do it in an hour, and because they're busy. And so one of the challenges that we always face is, how do we still get the same results we want, but that we design it in a way that best meets their needs? so that we can spread it over time in shorter segments with application on the job, and they will get the same results. And that's why virtual learning, especially virtual leadership development, can really be effective. So let me show you a best practice example of how we've done this so that you can see how it works, and this can give you some ideas about what you could do in your own organization. And a key thing is to integrate the processes together. So we've incorporated what we see as the primary skills managers need. So those things that we've talked about, where they've got to know themselves, they've got to know the motivators and the hot buttons of their people, they've got to be able to coach them to address performance problems, they've got to make sure their goals are specific and measurable and coach them throughout the year. All of those things are built into it. But we do it over a 5-week process, where every week they get new on-demand learning, and included in each week's learning is a video with downloadable tools and checklists. There's a personalized, the DISC management assessment is what we use, so they have a chance to use that. There's one-on-one telephone coaching sessions based on what they're seeing in their report and based on the challenges they're facing with their people. How do they do that? Social community interactions are actually built into the platform that we use. So during each week's module, they're reporting out on what they're doing and what they're learning and how it's working for them. And then we have a lot of reinforcement at the end of class, which I'll show you as well. But when you've integrated these processes into a virtual learning program, one of the things that you'll find is that they're going to be now better able to meet the needs of their people. And you would have done this and been better able to meet the needs of today's learners. They develop the skills in a very individualized, targeted way. It doesn't have to take long. It's just a little over a month, 5 weeks, without any travel. And you can put individuals or groups into this program. So a lot of times we will even do it as a customized process for our client organizations who maybe want to build in their own customized performance management system or some of the things that are unique to them. So this is a flowchart diagram of what our Leap to Leadership virtual leadership program looks like. Again, these are the modules that you can see spread out over 5 weeks, and the topic areas. A lot of these are the things that we found are the most important topics that have the most significant impact on their ability to really build an engaged workforce and really have people performing at higher levels than they have in the past. Now, we also build into this, at the end of 5 weeks, reinforcement newsletters that go out every 2 months for a year, so this is actually really more like a year-long process. We also ask them throughout the program to send us their feedback and tell us what they're doing, and what have they learned, what have they done, what's happened as a result, and we share all that with our client partners. So we found that this is a really effective way to put all that together. Now, one option that we've also included for clients who want this is that we also have a live one-day classroom experience where we can add practice sessions onto this at the end of the 5 weeks. So they've been working with our coach. They've gone through the virtual components during the 5 weeks, but a lot of times clients may want to still have an opportunity to get the whole group together. They might want to have a dinner for the group. They might want to have an opportunity for them to intermingle. And in that way, we found that in the one-day traditional classroom part, that is an option but not essential, that we've been able to build in a lot of that additional social interaction or community that way, as well as what we've been able to do virtually. So that, again, is an option. Now, what we see is that a result of this, here are the 3 key things that managers are better able to do. They can build a more engaged workforce, they can eliminate problem behaviors and wasted effort, and they can equip their staff with the skills to meet their annual goals. And those, really, we see in today's world are the most important things they need to really be profoundly skilled at. So in summary, what we believe is that learning doesn't equal attending. Learning equals real change. And you want to make sure that you choose a vendor that has a course design with heavy, heavy emphasis on reinforcement and application back on the job, and make it customized to fit your organization's unique needs, terminology, and goals. And partner with your senior team to gain the visibility throughout the organization, for the impact this can have. So I promised that I would share with you when we first started some resources to help make this easy to apply for you with your own people. And one resource is this website, leaptoleadership.com. On this website, you can learn a lot about the 5-week process. Our next class starts October 8th, and this link will tell you all about the program, the pricing. There is a $100 discount if someone signs up before October 5th because the class starts on October 8th, and then people will have an opportunity to receive all of those resources that we talked about. So that is a great site for you. We'll put that up at the very end if anybody wants to link to that at the end of today's session. Another resource I'd be happy to share is our blog. And this is our email address for our blog. And here we have a lot of tips and techniques for leadership development, and it's organized according to topic. So it's really like this blog is really a how-to for all types of different issues you might face at work. So leadership development, time management, team building, interpersonal skills. There's some things there about DISC that we talked about. There's a lot of things there, and you're more than happy to access it as a really good just-in-time resource for anything that you're interested in. Also, for every person that completes your feedback form for us today, we'll send you the ebook entitled The Winning Edge, Hidden Discoveries That Set You Apart. And this is all about DISC. It's how you can recognize the different DISC styles of the people that you work with and some of the key strategies and techniques that you need to take. So if you're not familiar with DISC, this is a great way to learn more about it. If you are familiar with it, I think you'll find it's a good, really good reference manual as well. So in summary, I'd just like to go back and look at what we've talked about today in our agenda. You know, we wanted to look at why leadership training is critical today. And certainly we begin to see that, especially as leaders, as organizations are trying to build their leadership pipeline, and there's a gap for most organizations, this becomes really critical. And we wanted to give you some tools to help you meet that need that's going to make it easy for you, easy for your learners, and easy for your organization. And then we looked at the 3 most essential skills that all of our experience shows us that are really critical in today's world. And the one most often overlooked tactic, which is really, you know, to coach them throughout the year on the goals they're held accountable for. The most important elements of learning that can help your leadership programs make a profound impact, and share with you the example of what we did. I'd like to, we're going to open up for questions in just a second, but I'd like to close with this thought. Again, we looked at this before. This was a key finding from the Association of Talent and Development, that good relationships between employees and their immediate supervisors are far and away the most important driver of employee engagement. 91% report that that's really to a high or very high extent. So when it's all said and done, the key people in your organization that help you build an engaged workforce, that help you have profitability and productivity in your organization, they're the one-on-one frontline managers that interact every day with the people that they lead. And how strong that relationship is and their ability to be effective in their role is the key thing that makes the difference. So I'd like to thank you all for your participation with us today. Kathy Doors from our office is standing by. She's going to put up in the chat box this link to Leap to Leadership so that you can just click on that link and that'll take you right to the page to tell you more about that. But Kathy, I think you have also been monitoring the question box. So Kathy, I'm going to open it up to you and see if you could let us know what questions we've received so far. And anyone else that has a question, please send it over in the chat, in the question box right now, and I can let you know. I see one question Kathleen just asked, will we be provided with the slide copies? We know that that's a question that always comes up. And yes, tomorrow I believe we're planning to send out a link to the webinar where you'll have a chance to see the recording as well as that. We do really appreciate everybody completing the feedback form, by the way. So that'll come up when you log off of today's session. Now, for those of you who do complete the feedback form, we'll send you the ebook as a way to say thank you for that. So, Kathy, I know that you're monitoring the questions box. You may have been already communicating with people. So could you let me know what questions we have, Kathy?
Okay, the first question I have here is, I like the idea of virtual learning, but I'm concerned I would miss some of the interaction we get in the classroom.
Right, that's a good question. I can understand that. And one of the things that we found is that there are two ways to incorporate the social component of that to get kind of the interaction you'd have in the classroom. One is, as I mentioned before, there is an option to have a one-day class for people in your organization after they go through the virtual part. But another way that we get the interaction is that social interaction is built into the virtual platform we use. So they interact with other participants. Where a lot of people are most interested in interacting, though, is with their coach. So every person is assigned a coach when they go through this, and they really want to get their input. They want to find out, how does this relate to me personally? They want to talk about their unique challenges, and that's another way that we build interaction into it. So either through the one-day live piece, the virtual components of the program, or the or with the coach. So I hope that answers the question of the person that answered that. Kathy, do we have any other questions?
Let's see. What about role plays?
So role play. So one of the things that we see here is that in the video components that we've built in, they actually include role play exercises built into them. So with the video pieces, the video is very interactive. It's actually more like a e-learning course where they have to answer questions and they have to see how to respond and go through a role play process. So they do that. They also can download in each week's module checklists that they can use, and they can role play with their coach one-on-one as well. So that's another way to do that. Anything else, Kathy?
How do I get senior management to support this?
How do I get senior management to support this? I think one of the best ways, a good question too, is to help your managers realize the cost of not developing leaders, especially if you look at all the research about the leadership pipeline. Feel free, if you want to share this webinar with other people in your organization, with your managers when you send you the recording, you'd be more than happy to share that with the managers. I would really encourage you to emphasize with them the cost of not developing your leaders, and what does the lack of engagement cost you, and what does the lack of performance coaching cost you. And also, if you want us to partner with you in a discussion with them, I'd be happy to do that. Just let us know. We can share some of these findings in person with them if that's helpful as well. Let's see. Anything else coming up, Kathy? Any very last questions we might be getting?
We have a question here that says, do you license your content and offer train the trainer?
Good question. Yes, we do, and we can provide that for you if that's what you're interested in. And so when you fill out the feedback form, please go ahead and just indicate that as a question, and we can get the answer right back to you. And if I know we're getting close to the end of our time now, if anyone else has any questions, feel free to send us your questions on the feedback form, and we do appreciate your completing that. And if you have any question that we did not get to, we'll go back through those and send you an email with the answers to that. So I thank you all for your participation today. Please share your thoughts with us, and if you'd like to learn more about the Leap to Leadership program, you can just click on the link in the chat box on your GoToWebinar control panel, and it will take you there. So thank you so much, everyone. We've appreciated your participation today. Great group, and have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye.